Welcome to Everything You Need to Know About the Ascension of Humanity, the podcast where ancient wisdom meets modern science and spiritual evolution gets real. I'm Heather, an energy healer, channel, and spiritual coach with Divine Ascension Company. Each week, we're diving deep into the mysteries of human consciousness, spiritual awakening, and the profound transformation happening within us and around us. But here's the thing. We're not doing this with our heads in the clouds. We're bringing neuroscience, psychology, quantum physics, and cutting-edge research to the table alongside meditation, energy work, and timeless spiritual teachings. Because the truth is, the ascension of humanity isn't some far-off cosmic event. It's happening right now in the choices we make, the awareness we cultivate, and the healing we do within ourselves. Whether you're curious about how mindfulness literally rewires your brain, why shadow work is backed by depth psychology, or what coherence between your heart and mind actually means scientifically, you're in the right place. We'll explore practices like breathwork, meditation, and emotional alchemy, not as abstract concepts, but as tangible tools grounded in both spiritual wisdom and scientific understanding. And here's where it gets even better. In our bonus episodes, you'll hear from real people sharing real stories. These are the warriors, the healers, the everyday seekers who've walked through their own darkness and found their light. They'll share their breakthroughs, their struggles, and the resources that actually help them along the way. Because personal growth isn't a solo journey, and you deserve to know you're not alone. So whether you're just beginning to question the nature of reality, or you're deep in your spiritual practice, this podcast is your companion on the path. It's time to expand, to awaken, and to rise together. Let's begin. Welcome back, friends. This episode discusses child abuse, domestic violence, and family court proceedings in detail. If you're a protective parent currently in litigation, please take care of yourself while listening. Some of this content may be triggering. If you're in immediate danger, please call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-SAFE or 7233, or you can text START, S-T-A-R-T, to 88788. What do you do when the system designed to protect your children is the same system that's putting them in danger? Before we begin, I need to acknowledge something. This episode is going to make you uncomfortable because we're talking about family court, about protective parents losing custody, about children being forced into unsafe situations by judges who don't believe them, about a system that's broken in ways most people never see until they're trapped inside it. Today's guest is Dr. Sandra Speer. She's a legal advocate who works with protective parents and survivors who are fighting to keep their children safe from abuse. She teaches them how to navigate family court when the court is failing them, how to document properly, how to speak in ways that judges will actually hear, how to protect their children within a system that often prioritizes the abuser's rights over the child's safety. Dr. Speer has seen it all. Mothers accused of parental alienation for reporting their ex-partner's abuse, survivors forced to co-parent with their abusers, children whose disclosures are dismissed, protective parents punished for protecting, and she's developed strategies, legal, practical, psychological, to help them fight back. This isn't spiritual content in the traditional sense, but make no mistake, standing between a child and harm is the most sacred work there is. If you're in this fight right now, you're not alone, and you're not crazy. The system is failing you, and today's guest can help you navigate it anyway. Dr. Speer, how are you doing today?
Well, thank you, Heather, for having me and for doing the work that you're doing. It's wonderful. So, okay, just to start out, I want to give people a very clear idea of where I come from. I come from a family. My father was a psychologist, a family psychologist who understood how to manipulate the person's mind to make them believe that they can't amount to anything. That'll give you an idea of where I came from. I was basically told I would never have a PhD. I would never do anything in my life. because I was mostly blind most of my life. So my father used that as an excuse. Then my mother was basically a psychopath whom he enabled. And basically, I was abused in all forms all my life ever since infancy, but I disassociated it most of my life. Well, when I was 18, I had been raped since I was 9 years old by a gentleman that my father moved into the house because he thought he could help everyone in the world, but he didn't take the time to understand that this gentleman was raping his sisters. He was the oldest of 10 children. And my mother blamed me for it. And when I was 18 years old, I grew up in New Orleans. I stood on the Mississippi River levee and I looked over at the French Quarter. I stood right across the river from the French Quarter and I saw the river boats and everything. And I made a pledge. I said, one day I would help others get through what I have gone through in my life. Little did I know what I still had to go through. I went through 2 divorces, very horrible divorces. One was a career criminal. I had to actually convict prosecuting attorneys in a DA's office in order to free myself and free myself from going to jail for embezzlement. I was being charged for embezzlement that I never even knew about of $10,000 and for assault of my ex-husband. He cut himself after I left. So I knew nothing of either, and I knew nothing of him being a career criminal until I left. So what I did was I basically didn't realize how badly I had been abused till I wrote a book in 2008, and it was The Remains of Hurricane Katrina, because I lost everything in Katrina. And I discovered 10 years later that the book was about the life of a person who had been abused their entire life. I didn't even realize what I had written because I had disassociated so much.
Wow.
Then my mother was 88 and I was 58. That gives you a little idea of how old I am. She beat me again. I mean, terribly. I have facial neuralgia, which she sent out. She said, I am going to hurt you, while she was throwing a purse at me. And she did. She caused it to go out of remission completely the rest of my life. I will suffer with it for the rest of my life. But I learned that I had disassociated most of my life with how bad she had treated me. And at that point, I was also working on my PhD. I did get my PhD late because of everything. And I'm very proud of it, though, because it was a lot of hard work. And what I did is, as soon as I graduated in 2018, I had already been working with domestic violence survivors since, in my early 20s. I have about 40 years in the industry. I also am a 20-year broadcaster along with it. That's what I did for a living. And what I did was I said, it's time. The survivors have nowhere to turn for the legal help that they need. My PhD is in public safety, and what I'm able to do is help people understand their cases as well as understand how to handle the cases, and I can help them with all the motions, everything that has to do with a case. I am a published writer. I also write articles for educational services. I've written on terrorism. So I have a tremendous understanding of the criminal mind as well as psychology. And I love what I do. There's nothing that brings me more pleasure than being the expert witness and the abuse corruption analyst that brings children home. And I do. I send them to their safe homes. I bring them to their safe homes. I can basically, the only way to say it is I'm able to go into court and handle the court in such a way that they understand that there is abuse going on in this case, who is abusing, and where the corruption is coming without totally insulting the courts. Family court is notorious. There are approximately, thousands. I can't even go through it. It's all over the world. I work in Europe as well. I've worked in South Korea. I've actually helped to win that case in South Korea. I win most of the cases that I bring in. The cases that I don't win, I help the children because I stay on the case, and they know as long as I have a watchful eye on what's going on with them, that the abuser better not act up. And that's the truth because, and I've been approached. I do assessments of cases. I've been approached by the abusers and told, oh, you've got to change your report. It's too damning. Excuse me. I'm sorry. If you want to coerce me, if you want me to change your report, then I hope you don't mind going to the DA to explain why you're trying to tamper with a witness. I do that. I've had that happen quite a bit.
Wow.
So I'm going to I think Heather wants to say something at a certain point. She wants to ask me a question. So I want to say, I've given you an introduction of who I am. Now I want you to tell me kind of what does your audience want to learn about from me? I can answer anything about abuse, parental alienation. I've worked hard to get to this point, and I hope to help people. Every day and every person that I help is just more to me than anything money that could buy. And everyone knows that divorce court is cash for kids, and it's sad.
Wow.
And there's not a whole lot being done about it right now.
So you said that you were an advocate for victims. You've mentioned a couple different kinds of things, losing your all your things in Katrina, that's a survivorship, the abuse, the embezzlement charges. So what kind of victims or survivors rather, do you actually work with?
I work with people that are involved in high conflict divorce cases, whether they involve child protection services, taking their children wrongly, taking their children. It doesn't always have to be high conflict divorce cases. That's one side of it. That's where the parental alienation comes. That's where the abuse comes. That's usually where the corruption comes. But there's corruption in child protection services as well. So basically, I handle two types of people. The first group that I work with are the people that have to do with child protection services taking their children for wrong reasons. And I have learned that they take children that should not be taken, and they often leave the children that should be taken. Now, the high conflict divorce cases involve children that are being wrongly ruled to an abuser. So I can help with both types of cases. Mm-hmm. But basically, my concentration is domestic violence, abuse, and corruption.
Gotcha. So with all the corruption going on, I mean, that's got to be really challenging.
It's very interesting because I have actually learned how to go into a courtroom, testify a complete parental alienation case without mentioning parental alienation. Because as soon as I mention parental alienation, the court goes, hey, parental alienation does not exist. Mm-hmm. Even though 90 to 95% of all high conflict divorce cases that involve children are parental alienation. Mm-hmm. So we have to go with psychological abuse or emotional abuse. And people don't understand. Psychological abuse and emotional abuse are both parental alienation techniques, but they are completely different. Mm-hmm. Psychological abuse, I'm sure you understand this one. Psychological abuse involves the cognitive areas, damaging the cognitive areas in the children. The emotional abuse is the tearing down of the child. As I was mentioning earlier, my psychologist father tore me down on my life. He convinced me I was nothing.
Mom. So I would assume that since you're quite passionate about this, that you feel this is your calling in life?
Yes.
It's amazing.
Interesting because it's interesting that you would say that. It's my passion. It's my love. It's something I've wanted to do all my life. Because your calling, because everything I did before seemed to hinge on my father's words. You're a failure. You can't do this. You can't do that. I would get jobs, not be able to keep them. I was very good on radio but I couldn't keep my jobs. And it was because I had no confidence in myself. And that's interesting that you would bring that up. That's very, you're right.
And it's also interesting because the reason why I asked is because a lot of people who are in the spiritual community or the medical field, they tend to gravitate towards passions, if you will, that are very reflective of their life experience, just like yours. So it's amazing to me to hear how often people go through these traumatic experiences and they go through these, perceivably awful life experiences and all of these really hard lessons, but ultimately it brings them to this wonderful point where it sounds like you're at now, where you have found a passion, you've gone through the things, so you're relatable, you understand the ins and outs of what's going on, and you're, like you said, you're able to go in and talk to the court without saying those terms that, all of a sudden everything is just no. And to have those abilities because of your life experience, it fascinates me how often this happens, but people don't realize that until, afterwards.
Yes. And when I recommend a client to go as a therapist, which I often have to do because I get all kinds, and they're going through horrible situations in their lives. As I explained to them, I'm not saying anything wrong with them, but you need someone to talk to before you go insane. Gaslighting campaigns and everything else.
Oh my God.
So I always recommend that they find a therapist that understands trauma or has experienced it. Because if you haven't gone through it, you don't understand it. It's like, I can go into a disaster situation. I'm emergency management trained as well. I'm a emergency management disaster coach, and because I understand what they're going through, my empathy is basically able to help them. And when my clients come to me and talk to me about their divorce cases or their struggles and their feelings, I'm able to crawl into them and feel it.
Yeah.
And if you can't feel trauma, you can't help it.
Yeah. And it's important for people to understand how empathy really changes a situation, to be able to put yourself in someone else's shoes and really feel what they're feeling, especially having your own similar firsthand experiences. It completely changes the interaction, the dynamic, the energy between that whole interaction, and really helps, you helping them, right? And understanding completely what they're going through. And that's relieving, because a lot of people, they listen or they try to give advice, but they really, like you said, they haven't been through it. They don't understand. It's just like addiction. It's just like anything else in the psychology field. Unless you have experienced it, you really don't know. But it's wonderful for me to hear about these people who are actually, instead of repeating the cycle, right? They're turning their life around and turning their experiences into a positive thing to help other people, which just warms my heart. I love that.
What's so most important is for survivors to remember, no matter how hard it gets, no matter how hard it is to find help, don't give up. Because these survivors and ones who are fighting for their children, I have to remind them, you're fighting for your children. And it's difficult. It's hard because you're feeling the pain and you're feeling the loss of your children. I thought I was going to jail for life. I had no idea I would ever see my children again. They were taken away from me immediately. I got lucky. My first husband and I are still friends, and he took custody of the children because one of the girls is his. But other people aren't that lucky. And the problem with child protection services is once they get their hands on a child, it's almost impossible to get them out.
Right.
And a lot of survivors turn to child protection services when they are having trouble, and child protection services doesn't take care of them. help is very difficult to find
Well,
for domestic violence survivors. And that's horrible. And it's getting worse.
wow. So, throughout your experience on this path, I mean, I'm sure you've seen some pretty crazy things, but is there one instance that was either a challenge that you didn't see coming, or an enlightening moment, or something that really sticks out in your mind that, like, makes you remember why you're doing this?
Every time I see one of my clients cry over their children, I know I'm doing the right thing.
Mhm.
And when I get letters like what I've got a letter from a group that I helped. I've got testimonials. And when I get the letters saying I got my children back, and that's for one example that comes to mind happened a couple of years ago. And please forgive me, I forget what state it was in. I work all over. But the woman around Thanksgiving, Child Protection Services, she had called Child Protection Services 6 weeks ahead and said, my child is getting, her stomach is blowing up. She's not eating. She's throwing up. You've got to do something, get her to a doctor, blah, blah, blah. They wouldn't do anything. They did nothing.
Wow.
And the mother kept saying, please help my child. Something's wrong with my child. Well, around Thanksgiving, her caseworker called her and said, your child's in the hospital. They took her parenting rights away because she was making too much noise about what was wrong with her child.
Oh my God.
Her child by this point had blown up so bad she couldn't eat at all. I think she had become septic and everything else. And the mother asked, can I please go see my child? Because they told her, they said, your child may not make it. She has to have surgery. She may not make it. She has a stomach tumor. She says, I want to see my child. They wouldn't let her. They would not let her see her child. Well, she almost got arrested and she went to the hospital and saw her child.
Mhm.
I honestly would have done the same thing.
Yeah, me too, for sure.
And so, but here, and it's so sad because I think she said the day after Thanksgiving, the child died.
Oh my God.
And I had the woman for a good 8 months. I worked with her and I watched her go from maybe a size 8 to a size 20 in like 2 or 3 months. The woman ate herself through it. They had taken her younger boy too. And I said, wait a minute. I said, no, so I started looking into her case and I wrote her caseworker and I said, this is wrong. You were wrongly holding on to this child, blah, blah, blah. And next thing I knew, I got about a month later, I got an email from the woman. She did get her son back.
Wow.
That made me feel good.
Yeah.
Because that helped her begin to repair and eat, because the sibling was suffering too.
Mhm.
He lost a sister.
Right.
So that's one case that will never, ever leave my mind.
So
Because
if she
it
had,
exemplifies, yes.
yeah, if she had a stomach tumor, why was the mother being held responsible for her child's illness?
Okay. The mother was not responsible for the child's illness. The mother had visitation at the time. The state had custody of the child in foster care. That's why they had control of the medical care. But the mother, when she saw her for the visitation, kept trying to tell the caseworker, there's something wrong with my child, that they're ignored. They did it. They had caught it when she had found it. The child may still be alive.
Wow. That's crazy.
And that exemplifies a lot of what goes on. I think it's approximately, I know in Michigan, they're losing about $1,800 a year in situations like this, or they were as of 22. I haven't updated in Michigan because I haven't worked in Michigan recently, but I would like to have another case in Michigan. Texas is horrible. California's horrible. They're all horrible. Europe is even worse though. Europe has a horrible problem.
Wow. That's funny because normally you hear about those other countries doing better than we are. Not so in this case, right?
No, not so. Because all the social services Okay, child protection services is basically a social services or welfare system. And all those social services systems basically work the same way, which is the problem. Mm. And they're basically encouraged or coerced by government to take as many children as possible because that ups their budget. In other words, they get bonuses for however many children they have, and then per age, per disability, the adoption also brings in money. Mm-hmm. So for the state. So I've often said that one of the reasons there's not a lot done in family court is because I feel like almost family court is supporting the government because there's oodles of money going in and out of family court. Wow. And the children are suffering.
So you mentioned that you believe that these systems could be vastly improved. If you could change one thing right now about how these systems work, what would it be?
I would train everyone involved in family court in all aspects of abuse again. And I would look at the books, the rule books, and I would say, why do you have a vague answer like emotional abuse is such and such? Emotional abuse is a form of manipulating the child, or however they define it. Or they say abuse is anything that causes a bruise or some kind of mark on the child. That's not all abuse is. Mm-hmm. And basically what I'm saying is family court has such loosely written rules, and same with CPS, loosely written rules that they can do anything that they want. And that's what I feel, and also I do not feel that the judges, well, I've actually been told by a Texas family court judge that there is corruption in the system. And I said, what causes the corruption? And she didn't say anything. And I said, it's ignorance, isn't it? And she couldn't say anything back.
It seems to be that
you didn't read that there were corruption in the system.
Yeah.
That's sick when a judge is telling you that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that certainly says something. Well, on a lighter note, are there any current, you said you have written a book before about your life and losing your things in Katrina. Are you working on any projects now? Any current things going on?
Right now, I'm concentrating on working with as many people as possible, because I'm having a feeling that my goal may be that in my early 70s, which is a little ways away, I may retire and write a book, because I have all the clips from my mother. I have clips from my brother. I have all these case histories. I have so much to leave the world, Wells. And I think I might want to do that. But in the meantime, I want to see how many people I can help.
Okay. So you said that you've worked all over the place. Where are you currently working now?
That's interesting. Florida. Florida, California. I was in Texas. I'm in North Carolina. I'm all over.
Gotcha.
Basically. Those are, a few of my cases right now. California's been bringing me quite a few cases. They have a very bad system. But Texas is absolutely horrible. They're, I call them a third world country. I've actually had Child Protection Services supervisors tell me, well, the child's missing. I said, well, the father has a right to know where his child is. No, he doesn't. I said, do you know where this child is? She says, yes. I said, well, then you owe the father a right to tell him. No, I don't. I said, he still has his parenting rights. Never did find his child.
Wow. It amazes me how not only the system is so unjust in helping the people, because that's what they were created for, right? But also the fact that, like, these people can do these things to each other, the couples, the divorces, the using children as pawns in their fighting and stuff. And it just, like, when are we going to start putting the children first?
When they're not cash for kids.
Yeah, well.
I mean, I hate to say it. That's what it is.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're doing amazing work. And if there is anybody out there or knows anybody out there that might be able to benefit from your services, how do they find you? Where can they get a hold of you?
They can contact me. I'm Sandra Speer, PhD. I can be found on Facebook through the group Legal Advocate for You, Not Family Court. That is my slogan, because too many of the attorneys and those that work with family court, they go along with the court. I do not work for the court. I work for the people. And that makes a huge difference.
Absolutely.
But you can also email me at Sandra Speer, PhD, at lifesanswers.care. That's also my website. You can find out more information about me. My CV is available through my site. Any questions, and I relish questions. And I also have made my appointments free because I'm here to help people. And of course, I'm not free, but I'm very low cost. I keep within people's budgets. But I also know that it's hard, and it's hard to make that first appointment because you really don't know who you can trust and who you can't trust. So I make all appointments for free.
That's awesome. That's amazing. It really sounds like you're doing a lot of good for these survivors, and that's truly amazing.
Thank you.
Do you have any last words or advice or guidance for the listeners or anyone that might be interested in your services or might be going through a hard time like this?
The first thing I would say is don't give up. The second thing is, if you are fighting an abuser or a narcissist or someone who is committing parental alienation, do not try to fight this alone. But also, I would advise you to have someone such as myself working with you, because these attorneys do take advantage of people, and they're not doing justice to these divorce. Many of the divorce attorneys are not helping people. So I would suggest that you do not try to fight your case alone.
Wow. Thank you so much. And thank you again for being on the show. It was amazing to hear your story. It sounds, like I said, you're doing great work, and it really does warm my heart to hear that there are people like this out there, because there are so many people that really need help like this. And like you said, it's so hard to find, and it's hard to know who you can trust. So I'm very thankful and grateful that you were able to come on here and share this information with us today. Thank you so much.
And I thank you for having me and doing the work that you're doing. That's valuable.
Thank you.
Now people care, and that's what you're sending a message of.
Yes, that's what we're trying to do, for sure. All right. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in, and we will see you next time.